What industry secret do you know that most people don't? Story 1. The reason why the kid fell off the Orlando freefall ride. Any ride with an over-the-shoulder restraint system works by using a proximity sensor to let the computer system know where the restraint is locked. The ride can't move unless all the sensors sense the correct metal at the correct position. On some rides, you can move the sensor a few millimeters for proper alignment, not enough to make a difference. On the free fall ride, someone in management might have wanted to modify a few seats for larger guests. Someone might have told a maintenance worker to move the sensor, which allowed the ride to start with the restraint in a position not in the original design. With this modification, the restraint would be at more of a 45 or so degree angle instead of directly downward. This may or may not have been done with an engineer's approval. This may or may not have been done with the ride vendor's permission. Any procedure like this is strictly prohibited from any standpoint in the amusement rides industry. I can't explain why they thought it was okay. In most situations, you wouldn't be able to move the sensor much without detaching the bracket and moving the whole thing to a different location. Again, this wouldn't even be discussed anywhere I have ever worked, but they might have at Icon Park. The details of this mechanical procedure never made the headlines in Florida because all the lawsuits were settled. In the end, someone decided to change the position of that sensor. We will probably never know who. There is probably a maintenance worker who was ordered to do so. I've worked on enough restraints to know that it was not an accident. Personally, I would have refused to do it, and so would almost everyone that works on these things. Story 2. Live audio engineer. Sometimes they're faking it. I've had to mic drum sets where the cables went nowhere. I've had to ask a keyboard player if they were having trouble because they were playing, but nothing was coming out of their channel. Don't even get me started on pitch correction, teleprompters, guide tracks, ghost musicians, backing tracks, etc. Story 3. I'm an academic researcher, and I can speak for a huge number in my field when I say, if you want access to our studies and they're behind a paywall, you can email us and we will send you the study. We are genuinely delighted to share, and if you want further context for the results or what have you, I'll always try my best to oblige. The only limiters on that last bit is that the original data for the study might have reached the end of our right to keep it, in which case it will have been destroyed. I might have forgotten details, or I might have written that paper during a particularly hectic time and my file system might be total shit. Also, a lot of us are on ResearchGate and various social media things, so you can contact us through there. If you can't contact us directly or we're being slow, one of the other authors on the paper might be contactable. Story 4. I don't know if this is really a secret, but something I encountered that I thought was interesting because I'd never seen it or considered it before. I work in closed captioning, and part of that workflow sometimes means doing a first pass on a project to an early version of the video. I think people would be surprised at how rough those early videos can be. Some dialogue, particularly when the character's mouth is not in the shot, is often not spoken by the characters saying it because it's temporary ADR that will get filled in by the actor later on. I've seen files where they don't even have temporary voiceover. It's literally just text on the screen saying, ADR line. This is a line of dialogue that this character is going to speak in this scene. You also occasionally get to see characters acting in front of green screens, or you'll see all the safety gear wires before it gets edited out. One of my favorite things, though, is rough special effects. Sometimes it looks like someone using editing software for the first time, creating a crappy fire overlay for what will eventually be an actual effect, or still images just being dragged around a screen. My all-time favorite was when a scene featured an animal attack, and the animal in the early video was a box with a text label on it just vaguely wriggling around while the actor reacted to it. I don't think it's that crazy or anything, but the viewer almost never gets to see it because it's all edited out and fixed by the time the show goes to air. It's just really funny and catches you off guard sometimes. Story 5. Trained artist here. Most oil paints are made with very toxic substances, as are most paint thinners and mediums. Every single one of my teachers was either very sick, cancer, Meniere's disease, or a bit crazy, eating chalk, licking palettes. All incredible artists I was privileged to learn from. One lesson I learned very well: I wear gloves and sometimes a mask when I paint. Eat it. I mentioned Meniere's because one of my favorite teachers had it. I worked closely with him, and his suffering holds a large place in my memories of school. While I think the exposure to toxins didn't do him any favors, I should not have implied a correlation. I apologize. To those asking, no paint was licked off palettes. They had just been cleaned with denatured alcohol, and he always led with, "Now you could eat off them." before waggling his tongue on the glass. Loved the shock factor. That guy did. Story 6, I'm a casino manager. It is definitely possible, more likely than you think, to win money in the short term. For example, if you walk in, bet on red-black on roulette, it's reasonably close to 50-50, not quite because of zero. You might do this once, double your money and leave. Congratulations. You will always lose in the long term. Always. Anyone that thinks they have some kind of system is a sucker. A game would not make it into the casino floor if the maths have not been rigorously checked and long-term simulations run to confirm. Asterisk exception to this is poker. The casino will always have a rake or time charge to make their money, but there is no reason you cannot consistently win money if you are skilled enough. Story 7. Worked in online community management and social media for years. Admins can read all of your PMs. Private only means private from the masses, not from administration. We had to be able to read them to check reports of abuse, grooming, illegal activity, etc. I can't tell you how much cringe-worthy shit I had to read through, especially from guys trying to hook up. Story 8. If your baby goes to a nursery daycare, chances are those weren't their first steps, words, etc. that you witnessed. Industry standard is to not tell parents when these things happen as it makes them feel bad. I've seen kids up and walking about the room for weeks, even months, before their parent proudly announced at drop-off that they took their first steps last night. Story 9. Some appetizers are the most labor-intense items on the menu to make. For example, dumplings takes one worker about an hour to make 15 orders. If you want to know where I'm getting at, if a restaurant offers a plethora of appetizers options, then there's a high chance a lot of them are store-bought and resold because there's no feasible way to prepare several orders for each item on the menu. Story 10. Google sucks so much now because around a decade ago, they abandoned the measurement known as page utility, which just measured the usefulness of the site itself. Instead, they migrated to expertise authority trust, which had good intentions of stopping the proliferation of bad info. But instead, it basically resulted in prioritizing large corporations and capital over any sites created by average people. The contract workers known as raters they employed to help determine the best search results became an echo chamber, as there were strict demands on exactly what the right answers were in most cases, and straying from the expectations of Big G resulted in poor reviews and possible firing. Of course, we were not allowed to say the G word, we could only say the client. It's about to get worse, too. They just laid off a huge swathe of them. Story 11. Car industry. Never buy a car that is completely new on the market. They always come with a ton of bugs that need fixing, and it takes about 2 years of serial production to get rid of most of them. If you must buy a new car, be sure the model has been in the market for at least 2 years. The reason for why we don't fix the problems before start of selling? Cost. Also, don't buy models that were in development during years of crisis. Example. During the 2008 financial crisis, we let got a huge number of people to fix the numbers in the books, didn't actually save the company money because they all got a big payout on their way out. So we were understaffed and under immense pressure to reduce cost. The models that came on the market after that time were shit. Like, serious shit quality we have never seen before. Story 12. I work in education. We are way behind the ball with student issues and are just flying by the seat of our pants, so to speak. We are in crisis, and most parents simply want to drop their kids off and hope they have a normal experience. None of this is normal. You need to start having conversations with your kids about mental health and social media. If not, woof, our society is not in good shape. Story 13. That store brand products and name brand products made in the same third-party factory aren't the same. People believe that there is no difference to the recipe, and that the same stuff is just put into a different box, that it's the same ingredients on the same production line. Each brand asks the factory to make the product at a particular price point. A luxury brand might want the product to cost $4 a unit, but the store brand might want it for $2. The factory will tailor the recipe to the price point, substituting expensive ingredients for cheaper ones, eliminating an ingredient altogether, altering the manufacturing process to require fewer people or equipment, or eliminating intermediate quality control steps. Sure, there might not be a detectable difference between some products, and other products might actually be identical to the point that spending more for a better brand isn't worth it. But a lot of products are noticeably different, even if they are made on the same production line by the same people. Story 14. I'm perpetually astounded by the fact that most people in the internet industry have literally no idea what they're selling. Like when someone buys internet access from an internet service provider, unless the ISP is really big, they typically have nobody on staff who could define what it is that a customer is paying for, or what the ISP is paying their supplier for, like where it comes from, what makes it more or less valuable, any of that. They're literally just flying by the seat of their pants, trying stuff, paying bills that show up without really being able to analyze whether they should be buying those services or not, charging their customers more or less what their competitors charge. In other industries, there's a keen awareness of input costs, how and when to economize, how to relate costs to value, etc. Maybe only the top 5% of internet service providers have anyone with even the faintest idea of any of that. It's like if you went to a car dealer and asked them what they were selling and they said 180 miles an hour, and you asked them where it came from and they said off the back of a truck. It's both amazing and pitiful. Story 15. Former manager for a certain video game retailer. If you were obviously and repeatedly selling us stolen stuff, we did, in fact, gladly help police when they came in. I even went to court once. Was funny seeing the looks on my criminal customers' faces in the courthouse lobby when they recognized me in a suit talking to the cops, and they realized what was about to happen. Went into professional YouTube later, as in large studio with videographers, editors, director, episodes, series. Lots of it was educational automotive stuff for performance custom vehicles. No, you're not crazy. It really looked that easy in the video and you're struggling with a horrible project that merely looked like it wasn't difficult. Because we spent hours off-camera jerry-rigging shit, redoing videos, and carefully editing magicking things to look good on camera. Story 16. Don't ever order mushrooms as a pizza topping. If you want mushrooms on your pizza, buy them fresh and add them yourself. 9 times out of 10, the mushrooms they're putting on your pizza should have been thrown out yesterday. Mushrooms are in relatively high demand, but have absolutely terrible shelf life that outweighs their demand. They really should get tossed at the end of the day after being in that little tray for however many hours they're in there for. But managers will put them back in storage because there's enough demand to justify not just tossing them like you would with leftover anchovies or something. And it's not against the rules to restore them. Usually corporate will tell you they have 3 days shelf life, even though they arrived at the store already withering and partially slimy. Just don't do it. Buy your mushrooms fresh and eat them the same day. Gives me shudders just thinking about it. Story 17. Many people running anesthesia at your local veterinary hospital are not qualified to do so and have been taught secondhand instead of going to school. I have been in the field for 8 years and am appalled. At one hospital, I was asked to train a dude how to run anesthesia who had literally no veterinary experience. It is such a complicated process, and to do it correctly, you need to know all the individual components of the machine, what they do and why, in addition to knowing all normal vital parameters for your patient and how to adjust fluids/gas/KRIs depending on your procedure. You also need to know anesthetic agents, which combinations go together, and which ones do not, and why, etc. I told them I absolutely would not be training someone with a few semesters of an ecology degree how to run anesthesia. It was such an insane ask. It makes me feel so bad for owners who think they are leaving their pets in qualified hands. Most of the time, it's pure luck that they get through the procedure, and many people have no clue what they're actually doing. It's frightening. Story 18. When the U.S. overthrew the Taliban, they used a pro-opium rebel group named the Northern Alliance to fight the ground war and then put them in charge of the country. The soy farmers who grew soy because they were terrified of the very anti-opium Taliban immediately swapped their crops over to opium poppy, where Afghanistan quickly became over 90% of the world's opium supply, mostly overnight. Initially, the U.S. tried burning the opium crops, but that didn't exactly win the hearts and minds of the people, so they resorted to a combination of A. Paying farmers the difference to just grow soy instead, and B. Actually purchasing some of the opium from Afghan farmers for the U.S. pharmaceutical industry, who suddenly had a huge surplus of opium to offload. Oh, did I mention this was coincidentally exactly when the oxycodone epidemic in the U.S. happened, and a bunch of powerful billionaires in the pharmaceutical industry decided to push tons of highly addictive opium pills to basically every home and family in the country? It's a fascinating little detail nobody ever seems to talk about.